Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is the Alabama Student Eagles podcast. My name is Brady Johnson.
And mine is Jill Blocker.
And today we are really excited to be joined by the former Alabama Supreme Court Justice and candidate for Attorney General this year, Jay Mitchell. We're really excited to have him on the podcast today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Thanks for having me, Brady. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks,
of course. Yeah, we really appreciate your time today. I'm excited for this conversation. I think it'll be really fun to, learn about some of the cases you heard on the Supreme Court, learn about why you're running for Attorney General, what the role of Attorney General would actually look like. I think that'd be really good for some of our young people out there to learn about that. But to get it started, I want you to just share a little bit about your background, about yourself, where you grew up. Just share your story with the audience so they can get to know you.
Yeah, well, I was born in Mobile. My parents were living down in that area. I'm a bicentennial baby, born in 1976, okay. So you can do the math and figure out I'm turning 50 this year. And then I did my early growing up in the Wiregrass, where my parents were both from originally. My mom was a small-town girl from Geneva, Alabama, down on the Florida line. My dad was the son of a Methodist minister back in the day, so he kind of grew up hopscotching across South Alabama. And I grew up early on, Coffee County, Houston County. And then my dad was a salesman, and my mom was a Christian school teacher and a stay-at-home mom. And when I was 10, my dad got transferred to Birmingham. So I went to middle school and high school in Homewood, right over Red Mountain from the city of Birmingham. Loved being there. And then I went across town for college to Birmingham Southern College. Rest in peace. It's sadly no longer there. But I was a walk-on basketball player there in the 90s. I tell folks I was not an All-American. My job was to get our All-American ready to play in practice every week, and I've got the scar tissue to show for that. And we won a national championship my freshman year, and he was named the MVP of the tournament. So I like to think I did my job being on the team. Loved being in college there, loved being on the team. I did a year overseas on a Rotary Fellowship. Lived in Ireland for a year, and then I came back and went to the University of Virginia for law school and met my beautiful wife, Elizabeth, there. We met on day one of law school. She's a proud Auburn grad, but we had never met till we showed up in law school. So we met, fell in love, got married, and then moved back to Alabama. And she didn't practice law for very long. We started having kids within a couple of years of being married, and she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So she's been a stay-at-home mom now for over 20 years. We've got 4 kids. And then I went to practice law in Birmingham with one of the larger law firms there, and was in the courtroom representing my clients for 16 years before I left and ran for the Alabama Supreme Court.
Okay. That's really cool to hear.
Quite the track record.
Yeah. I love that. So tell us a little bit more. I'm really interested about, you playing basketball and being a part of that national championship winning team. I think that's really interesting. So tell us a little bit more about that experience. I don't know if you learned any leadership lessons from being a part of a team like that. If there's anything you want to share there. Did you play basketball all the way through college?
No, I played my first 2 years.
Okay.
I figured out pretty quick I wasn't going to the NBA.
That's a pretty high level right there.
There were some other things I wanted to do on campus before I left. I was student body president, for example, my senior year, and so there were just some things I wanted to do. But I still helped the team. I'd come back and play pickup, and still knew the plays and the system, and knew a lot of the guys who were playing after me, just because I still hung out with the team a lot. Yeah, I love the game of basketball. Our coach in college, Dwayne Rebold, who's kind of a legendary coach, especially kind of in the small school ranks, he would always say, basketball is a metaphor for life. And so there are lessons you can learn through the game, and I did. I learned a lot of great lessons working with playing on the team. So my freshman year, we had 15 guys on the team. 10 of us were completely new. The walk-ons, we had some guys come in from junior college, had some transfers, and we started the season 3-2. And, kind of looking to see how that's going to go. And then we won the next 32 games.
Wow.
And won the national championship, played on ESPN in the national championship. And I learned a lot that year. Again, I wasn't a star. I was part of the scout team helping to get our starters and our second team guys ready to go. But, I learned a lot about being a good teammate, making sure that I learned and understood my role. Whenever you're in any kind of team setting, whether it's athletic or otherwise, everybody's got a role to play. And whatever your role is, you want to do it to the very best of your ability. And I watched my coach and our team captains who were really great leaders do a great job of assigning people their roles. I think that's a really important part of leadership. The people you lead need to know their role, understand their role, and then you help them to develop in that role. So I thought our coaches and the team captains did a great job in that. And then just learning how to win, how to have a winning mindset. I came from a great high school program, great high school coach. We didn't go very far in the playoffs, and I don't think, as gifted as a lot of my teammates were, we just understanding what it took to win and what it took to prepare to win.
Yeah.
I really learned that, especially my freshman year of college and playing there at Birmingham Southern. So I took those lessons away, took them into law practice and into being a judge too.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I would say, with sports in general, there's a lot of lessons you can learn from competing and from being a part of a team and working together with other players on the team. There's a lot of lessons you can learn from that you can apply to other areas of life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool. And basketball, especially, is a team sport because it's all about team chemistry and communication and whether or not you can work with the other players on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you got to have good flow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You got to be able to play well on offense, play well on defense, have that versatility. And then basketball really is a game of momentum.
Yeah.
You get on a run, momentum tends to beget momentum in that game. Yeah. And then, if you're playing an opponent who's got momentum, you got to figure out how to shift that momentum. And it really takes, it takes big moments to do that. So it's very much a metaphor for life.
Yeah. One thing that my mom would always say is that much like basketball, life is like basketball, but life is also a lot like chess. It doesn't matter if you are a rook or the queen, you can't play without each piece, no matter what piece you are. So
everyone has a role to play.
Everyone has a role to play, no matter how big or small, but you need each role in order to play the game in general. And you see that a lot when working for the government. You really have to collaborate in order to solve a problem. And I think that teamwork needs to be applied more to the government. I think that we hear a lot of, the government is supposed to work for the people, not the people are supposed to work for the government. And so I think that you can apply that same basketball teamwork mindset to roles like the one that you played on the Supreme Court and the role that you might play if you end up becoming Attorney General.
Yeah,
that's well said, Jill.
Yeah, and thank you. Yeah. Speaking of working on the Supreme Court, though, what is one of the most interesting cases that you worked on?
Well, I had a lot of interesting cases there. So that your audience knows, I practiced law for 16 years, and then I made a decision to run for the Alabama Supreme Court back in 2018. And so I was fortunate enough to be elected by the people of Alabama to go there. And we have 9 justices on our state's highest court, all elected statewide. And I really enjoyed that opportunity. We're handling the biggest, toughest, most complex cases that we have in the legal system here in Alabama on both the criminal and the civil side. And, to me, a lot of time, I'll tell you what I really learned. I really learned it's tough to judge a book by its cover when it comes to cases. So the cases that look like, big issues going on of big consequence, big civil case with a lot of money and damages, that sort of thing. A lot of times, though, big briefs, a lot of material in front of the court, but a lot of times the issues were very simple and straightforward. And then conversely, you would have some cases come in where the briefs were very short and the issues were pretty discreet, but they were like the thorniest issues you had to deal with, whether it was applying a constitutional provision or applying a statute passed by the legislature. So in that vein, there are a couple of cases I remember as being really thorny and to me very intellectually challenging. One is there was a group of deer breeders who they wanted to breed hybrid deer. And it would basically, through the genetics, put a mule deer together with a white-tailed deer from Alabama to try to create a larger species of deer that could be hunted for sport.
Weird.
And the Department of Natural Resources here, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources here in Alabama opposed that and said that was a violation of the law. And so we had to, there was litigation over that, a big lawsuit. And it had to do with the interpretation of this law. And so it ultimately came to us. And I'll tell you, it really ended up turning on the placement of a comma in the statute and how that affected the phrasing across the entire provision. And so, yeah, so we really had to wrestle with that, both in my chambers where I would work with my staff, and then the other justices. We really had to wrestle with that. But that to me, that was a fascinating case to work on. And a couple of years later, I was sitting there one weekend, and a friend of mine had flown out to somewhere in the Pacific Northwest to do some hunting, and was sitting in an airport, and there was an issue there of North American whitetail, and he just opened it up, happened to be reading it, and there was a whole summary of the case because I had written the opinion for the court. Okay. And he's like, "Man, I never heard about this." Yeah. So I was like, "Hey, we made North American whitetail. That's cool." We had another case that had to do with the sale of tax delinquent properties, and this is kind of maybe a little esoteric, but what happens is you own a property, you have to pay the taxes on it, and if you don't pay the taxes on it for a certain period of time, then then it's delinquent and can be sold at auction. And so there's a procedure that has to be followed there in order to sell the tax delinquent property. And they're kind of a laundry list of requirements, but one of them had to do with it has to be done by public outcry on the front steps of the courthouse. The statute was written a long time ago, like during the horse and buggy days, back when that's the way it would happen. You'd go out there and do it. Well, there were some courthouses that weren't doing that. They would go into the courtroom or do it in a conference room or wherever. And so the question before the court then was, do we actually have to follow this particular requirement in here saying that you have to do it on the front steps of the courthouse? And our court said, yeah. I mean, it may be outdated, it may be antiquated in the age of the internet and Zoom and all these other things, but that's what the law says. Yeah. And we've got to honor the words on the page. And if the legislature wants to change the law, they can change the law. We're not empowered to do that. And so we ruled based on the law, and then the legislature did what it should do. It came along later on and amended it, so you don't have to do that anymore. But that had to that was kind of a thorny thing to work through too.
Those are some interesting cases, especially the one about the deer breeding. Yeah. I don't know where else you'd hear about that.
I could have just stopped at deer breeding.
No, I mean, yeah, and I think it's also interesting how you're talking about like small details in the law make a big difference. Like you were saying, the placement of a comma in a sentence can change the meaning of the whole law. Well,
when I was a judge, I was very much a textualist and an originalist. You hear these terms talked about in relation to the U.S. Supreme Court. Justice Scalia, Justice Thomas, Justice Alito, and basically what their companion legal doctrines of interpretation. Textualism basically says when I have a legal text before me, like a constitutional provision or a statute passed by the legislature, my job is to interpret and apply the law based on how it's written, the text on the page, whether I agree with it or not. My job is to get the words on the page right. And then originalism is a companion doctrine that comes along whenever you have an older provision. So, words and phrases can change meaning over time just in everyday discourse. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, if I'm interpreting something in 2026 that was passed in 1886, what if the word meant something different in 1886 than it does today? Yeah. And so what originalism says is, as judges, our responsibility is to come along and interpret the words on the page as they were understood by the public at the time it was passed, not as it's understood today. And that helps helps the law to be anchored.
Yeah.
And also it helps to limit and curtail judges from going wild.
Going back to the original meaning of the law.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's important. People would twist that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Mm-hmm. So what you end up with, if you don't abide by that idea, then you just have judges saying, well, I think it means something different today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then that's where you end up with, frankly, in my view, judicial lawlessness.
Yeah, that's where you get the idea of the living constitution that the left is promoting, where they want to be able to interpret the original intent of the founding fathers however they see fit, according to their whims or whatever is popular at the present time.
That's right. That's right. And it gives them the opportunity then to just sort of legislate from the bench.
Yeah.
Which, in our federal system, you can't unelect a judge. They're just there for life unless they're impeached. And so it ultimately robs power and sovereignty from the people.
Yeah.
And we the people govern.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more, maybe some of the lessons or some of the takeaways that you have from your time serving on the Alabama Supreme Court. I don't know if there's any other interesting situations that came up or difficult decisions that you had to make, or different scenarios that might have happened while you were serving on the Supreme Court. Just fill us in a little bit more on your time there.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I really loved working with my colleagues on the Supreme Court. It's a court of 9. It is the highest court in Alabama, the court of last resort when you're on matters of Alabama law. And we just have some really terrific justices who are there, not only just amazing men and women personally, but who are really there doing their level best to get the law right. And I learned a lot from my colleagues, frankly, just working with them and exchanging ideas with them, exchanging drafts of opinions and memos. So really amazing men and women there who are the justices, and their staffs are equally very impressive. Probably the part of my job I enjoyed the most, I love the intellectual challenge of handling cases that had some interesting puzzles to work through, interpretive puzzles. But probably the most fun part of my job was working with my law clerks. So these are sharp young people who generally are just fresh out of law school. And they come and work with me in my judicial chambers, generally for a year, and then I help them to develop and they launch into hopefully very fruitful legal careers. And I loved having my law clerks there. It really kept me sharp, kept me in teaching mode, and they were just very fun and impressive to work with. Justice Clarence Thomas on the U.S. Supreme Court actually chose 3 of my law clerks to come and clerk for him.
Oh, wow.
In Washington on the high court, which I think is a testament to the quality of legal work we were doing in my chambers. And certainly I was doing my level best to bring the ideas and the doctrines that Justice Scalia and Justice Thomas and Justice Alito have been doing at the U.S. Supreme Court and really be doing that here in Alabama as well.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I want to shift the conversation topic a little bit. We asked this question a few times on our other episodes. What is one of the most impactful books that you have read? So many times we get to hear some of the most interesting stories that people tell when they come on our podcast from the information they gain from these really incredible books that they've read. So I just want to know, what's yours?
Yeah, no, that's great. To Kill a Mockingbird was a big book for me.
Yes.
I read that one. I read it in the 10th grade. And I had no lawyers on either side of my family. So that was the first time really that the law that light bulb came on for me.
Yeah.
Was reading that book in the 10th grade, was really moved by that book, by the examples set by Atticus Finch, and loved all the characters, just great richness in that book as well. So that was a big one for me.
Yeah. I really loved that book as well.
That applies perfectly.
Yes, it definitely does. And I think reading is great. I think there's definitely a lot you can learn. And so, we always encourage our students to read a lot, to study history, to try to learn as much as you can. Because in order to be a free people, you also have to be an educated people.
Yeah.
You have to have an educated citizenry if you're going to actually take responsibility for your government.
That's great.
It kind of baffles me sometimes when you ask people our age what books they read. They say, "Oh, I don't really like reading."
Podcasts are the new reading, right?
Yeah.
Is that what I hear?
Yeah.
No, that's not true, everybody.
Podcasts are good too. I mean, you can listen to books on Audible. I mean, that's another
true.
great. If you're riding in the car, you can put on an Audible book.
Wanting a fantastical story at all times in my hands. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't fathom not liking reading or podcasting or audio booking, any of that.
Social
games.
media has really shortened the attention span, I think, of a lot of people nowadays.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's important to go back to reading and go back to those deeper levels of learning. I think that's really important. I want to now move on because you're running for Attorney General, and so I'm curious why you decided to step down from the Alabama Supreme Court and really take on this campaign for Alabama Attorney General.
Yeah. Well, I love being a justice on the Alabama Supreme Court. Again, I wasn't running away from anything. The last couple of years, I've had conversations with people across the state about whether I might be interested in leaving the court to go run for AG. As y'all probably know, it's truly a vacant spot. It's an open seat in 2026. And I've had some interest in doing it. As much fun as I've had being a judge, if you're a judge you need to be above the fray, and you need to just handle the cases and controversies that come before you. And there's been part of me kind of itching to be back in the middle of the fray. I spent 16 years in the courtroom on behalf of clients. Candidly, the big obstacle for me was that under our state's judicial ethics rules, if you're a judge and you're going to run for a non-judicial position, you have to hang up the robe and you have to leave the bench, and you don't have a paycheck. And I got 4 kids. I got 2 kids in college, 2 kids in high school.
Need that.
But here's what really clinched it for me. Back in January of last year, I went up to Washington for the swearing in of President Trump. And I'm a big fan of the president, a big fan of his vision, his policies, what he's trying to accomplish. And when I was up there, I just was really fired up. And I came home and I told my wife, Elizabeth, I said, sweetie, for our whole lives, as Christians, as conservatives, we've been on defense. We've been on defense against a lot of the junk coming out of D.C., the media, the culture, against a lot of the junk coming out of our colleges and universities. But now, for the first time in our lives, with President Trump going back into office and with the mandate that he's carrying from the American people, we're not on defense. We're on offense. And as she and I began to reflect more on that and unpack that, what we realized was that we have a unique opportunity to get generational conservative victories in our country.
Yes.
Not just wins for the next 4 years or the next 8 years, but Lord willing, victories that my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids are going to be able to live into. At the same time, I was looking toward Montgomery, where I'd been serving, and realizing we're about to have fruit basket turnover in state government. All of these very important positions of authority are coming open. And I think what I came to realize, which I'm sure y'all probably realize, is that if we're going to have true, lasting conservative change in America, it can't just happen in D.C. It's got to happen in the states. And if you really want to boil it down, it's got to happen in the red states, which, in my view, is why it's so critically important in this next election that we elect leaders who don't just wear the right party label, who don't just say the right things, but who really understand what time it is in America. This is not a time to be on defense, for being passive, for lying back. This is a time for going on offense with President Trump and soon to be Governor Tuberville. And so Elizabeth and I, after a lot of prayer and reflection and seeking counsel from our pastors, we just determined that we feel called. We feel called to the front lines of the MAGA movement, and we feel called to this moment. And so that's ultimately what made my decision to step away from the court and jump in this race. And I'll tell y'all, I mean, it felt like a little bit at the beginning, like, bungee jumping without a rope. You leave, it's like, okay, here we go. But ultimately, it is a calling. And we believe we're following the Lord's call in our lives and doing this.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me, going back to what you said earlier about momentum. When you're talking about basketball, I'd say that the conservative movement has some momentum right now in the country, winning on these cultural issues, winning on some of these important political and societal issues right now, moral issues. Like abortion is one example, with the repeal of Roe v. Wade and the fact that now the pro-life movement has some momentum there. So it really is an opportunity moving forward for the conservative movement to take offense, like you were saying.
Yeah, legal immigration is another one, definitely on headlines right now as well.
Yeah, these are key things. These are key things. And I'll take abortion, for example. I'm proud of my record on the court as a justice. I think anybody who followed my work will tell you I was very much a pro-life judge and in upholding Alabama's very strong pro-life laws. So back in 2020, for example, well before the Dobbs case was even decided, I'm not even sure the petition had been granted yet, in an abortion case that came before us where we weren't able to grant relief because there were problems in the way the appeal had been presented. I wrote a concurrence calling on the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey at the earliest opportunity, joined by 3 of my colleagues in that opinion. And I took a lot of heat from the left for even pointing that out and suggesting to the U.S. Supreme Court that ought to happen. Later on in another case, I had the opportunity in the majority opinion of a case in our court to uphold Alabama's Sanctity of Life Amendment, which was overwhelmingly passed by the voters of Alabama in 2018. So we have good, strong pro-life laws in Alabama that are now in effect with Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey going away. But as y'all probably are aware, abortion is still very much a thing in Alabama. It's not happening in surgical centers now, but it's happening through chemical abortion. And so, the fight continues. The fight continues to make sure that we're educating our populace about the gift of life and upholding the sanctity of life, and then making sure that our laws are being applied in the correct way. And Jill, as you point out, there are other big issues too. I mean, illegal immigration is one of them. I'm working a lot with law enforcement right now in this campaign across the state, hearing from them, strategizing with them about how we can do much better enforcement when it comes to illegal immigration across our state in a more seamless way, and make sure that hopefully, Lord willing, me as the next Attorney General, I can help to quarterback that effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. Are there any like specific issues that you would be focusing on, maybe the abortion one or the illegal immigration issue, but are there any other specific issues that you would want to focus on if you were elected to Attorney General?
I was about to ask the same question.
Yeah.
Like, what would your top 3 priorities be?
Well, the biggest priority for me is going to be dealing with the problem of violent crime in our state. You know, we're sitting here in Coleman County today. Y'all do a lot of things right here. Y'all have great law enforcement leaders here.
Coleman's a great place to live.
It really is. It really is. And, you know, Chief Joey Duncan, for example, in Coleman has endorsed me in this race. We all have great law enforcement leaders up here, but we got some real hot spots in Alabama, and they've gotten a lot hotter the last 5 to 10 years. And they're going to keep getting hotter unless we have the right leadership coming from the Attorney General's office. You know, when we're looking at these hotspots, Birmingham and Montgomery the last few years have kind of been the poster children for this. But when you look at a lot of where our hotspots are, they're blue cities with blue city mayors who are soft on crime and are not backing up their law enforcement officers when they're out there apprehending bad guys. And so we've really got to get tighter on that. I think we're at a point now where we may need to have the state step in and do more, especially in Montgomery. Montgomery's out of control. There were 4 murders there this past weekend. So we, you know, Coach Tuberville, for example, has talked about sending in the National Guard to Montgomery and Birmingham. I'll tell you, I support that. I think we can do it in a strategic and precise way that will really help the people of those cities. But look, we got to solve that problem. And we got to do it for the people who live in these areas. There are wonderful, law-abiding people who want to raise their kids and go to work every day. But we've also got to do it for those of us who live around these areas, because what happens in these hot spots doesn't stay there. It inevitably spills out.
Yeah.
So if there's bad stuff going on in Birmingham and Bessemer, it's coming up I-65. There's bad stuff happening in Decatur, it's coming down I-65. So we got to make sure we have an Attorney General who's got his eye on the ball, and that's going to be my number 1 priority. You know, beyond that, there are a number of things. I mean, illegal immigration's a big one. I'm thankful that a number of our great Republican sheriffs who were early adopters of the MOU agreements with ICE have endorsed me in this race as well. I believe we're at a point, you know, right now it's discretionary about whether a sheriff wants to work cooperatively with ICE when they apprehend an illegal immigrant and turn them over. Texas has just passed a law making it mandatory. So some of their blue cities and blue county sheriffs aren't able to have that option anymore. They're required to do that. We see other states doing the same thing. I want to make sure we have as much seamlessness and uniformity in the way that we're doing that across the state, and as much seamlessness as we can in working with the Trump administration on that. The other big thing on my mind, I'll tell you, and I'm talking to students here, and I know your audience is primarily students. I've got 4 kids, 2 in college, 2 in high school. My kids have grown up online in a lot of ways, you know, sometimes more than I want them to. And they've done a good job of, I think, having balanced childhoods and being balanced teenagers. But I've really grown alarmed by a lot of the predators who are out there online preying on our kids, especially on these gaming platforms, Roblox, Discord. You know, we can talk more of that. So these social media platforms. And we're just seeing more and more and more of this. And I'll just tell you, I'm really alarmed by that. And we have got to fight that, and we have got to shut that down. And that is very much on my heart right now. And it's a fight I'm going to fight. And I'm coming to that fight with the heart of a dad. I'm not going to allow these child predators to prey on our kids. And if there are programs or platforms out there that are actively enabling it, or even passively enabling it in any way, we got to make sure we confront it. And that's going to be a big priority for me as well.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Those are a lot of the same issues that I'm most passionate about as well. And one common theme throughout each of those things that you mentioned, wanting to touch on, things like crime, illegal immigration, you know, predators online, all 3 of those have a theme of taking advantage of people. And I think, and I just wanted to touch on this a little bit, about, because we were talking about reading and being educated earlier and how our generation isn't as educated as they need to be. I think that a lot of the people who support illegal immigration, they don't understand the extent of the danger that it's causing throughout America and a lot of the crime that's going on because of it. And you were saying earlier about how if something is going on in one county, it's going to make it to the next eventually. And I think that's a major issue. Coleman is a really great place to live, but I think one of our major problems is that we live in a bubble and a lot of people here believe that it's never going to reach me, it's never going to happen to me, Coleman is red, and we all believe the same things here, but eventually it's going to make its way down here. And so it's important to stop it where it starts, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's all very well said, Jill. No, it's not compassionate to allow illegal immigrants to come here. I mean, it's not compassionate toward them, first of all. I mean, a lot of them are making this journey where, especially with kids and women, I mean, there's a lot of vulnerability there that you're exposing them to by incentivizing them to come here. But look, it's definitely not compassionate toward Americans. We've got to have American leaders who are for Americans, first and foremost, for our people. And so when you allow illegal immigration to happen in that way, you're opening the door to large waves of crime and also displacement in terms of jobs. I mean, it really distorts your economy and it displaces Americans from being able to go and get jobs and allow wage increase to happen economically as well. A couple of years ago, I was on a family trip to California. My first cousin's a Border Patrol agent out in San Diego on the border next to Tijuana. And I went out with my son. We rode the border with him. This was under Joe Biden. And I will tell y'all, first of all, when we were there getting ready to go out, we were kind of next to the break room with the Border Patrol agents. There were a ton of "Let's Go Brandon" stickers all around. They were not fans of Joe Biden. But we were out riding the border, and it was amazing how many able-bodied young men were coming over the border.
Right.
They knew the drill. They knew what to say. They put them in vans. They took them to the processing center, gave them their papers. They're out, and you'll never see them again.
Yeah.
Turkey, China, Venezuela. I mean, it was incredible.
Military age men.
Yeah, exactly. And they came into our country the last 4 years, and before President Trump came back in, and they're still here. They're still
you're
here.
Still seeing the ramifications today.
Still seeing the ramifications today, and so I'm really thankful that the president, first and foremost, secured the border, and that happened within about 100, maybe less than 100 days, which proved that we could have been doing it all along.
Exactly.
And then obviously going after the bad guys who are here committing crimes, but we've got to make it. We've got to create the conditions where the people who are here legally turn around and go home. And I think the Trump administration is doing a really great job of fostering that, and we at the state level need to work very assertively and helpfully with the administration to get that done.
Like, just take a look at New York. In some areas, groups of people are trying to implement Sharia law in America.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's absolutely one of the main things that can never branch out, like we were talking about earlier. It can never reach Alabama. It has to be stopped at the start.
Yeah, and if history has taught us anything, it's that you should never say, "Oh, that will never happen here."
Oh, yeah.
Nobody should ever say that will never happen here, and that's why it's important for people to get involved now, so that we make sure that those ideas, those dangerous ideologies, never come to our great state of Alabama.
And one more interesting thing about that is that a lot of people on the left have a very feminist point of view, and so they claim to be pro-woman, but then they also claim to be pro-legal immigration, and that is not pro-woman. That's the complete opposite. That is, rape, murder, and a lot of it is happening to children under 12 years old. It's really, really sad, and I think that's one of the major issues we were talking about earlier about being educated, that people, especially on the left, need to educate themselves on, is that you're not being pro-woman whenever you are pro-illegal immigration.
Well, I'm glad you brought up radical Islam, because that is something I have been speaking out against in this campaign. We cannot allow Alabama to become a place that is inviting to radical Islam and Sharia law. I'm personally thankful for the way Coach Tuberville's been talking about this, that Congressman Barry Moore's been talking about this and leading an effort in the House of Representatives in Washington. But we cannot allow that to happen. I think the big cautionary tale in America, look at Minneapolis, look at Dearborn, Michigan. We can't allow our communities in Alabama to turn into that. And you want to look at it even more profoundly, look across the pond to Western Europe. You look at the UK, you look at France, you look at Germany, all the enclaves that are there that then turn into hotbeds for radical Islamic terror. And so we've really got to have, our leaders really need to be attuned to this. We saw just in the last couple of weeks, Ken Paxton, the AG of Texas, has been investigating and ferreting out efforts made in Texas to impose Sharia law. It's there.
Yeah.
And then we saw Governor DeSantis in Florida. They have a new law there in Florida allowing for the designation of domestic terror groups, and he's calling out as domestic terrorists those who are trying to invite and insinuate Sharia law there. So we've got to have, we as leaders, we've got to be attuned to that too, and make sure that none of that is allowed to come to Alabama. And I'm not going to let it.
Yeah, amen to that. Yes. Okay. So as we kind of wrap it up today, I wanted to ask you just here at the end if you've got any closing advice or words of wisdom for some of our students out there who maybe want to get more involved in politics or just want to know how they can make a difference in their communities.
Well, I think one great way is participating in organizations like Eagle Forum. I think that's a great way to plug in. My involvement with Eagle Forum goes back 30 years.
Okay.
Because when I was a student at Birmingham Southern, there was a proposal made by the student government to put condom machines in dorms, in the dorm bathrooms. And I didn't think that was a good idea. Spoke out against that. I ended up writing an article for the student newspaper, actually, and I called a friend who was with Eagle Forum who got me some information, got me some data so that I could put it in there, and thankfully that proposal never came to fruition while I was there. But I think organizations like Eagle Forum are great. I think plugging in with high school Republican clubs, young Republicans, college Republicans, I think being involved in the party is really good. And then, Brady, we were talking on the way in. My oldest daughter is a senior about to graduate from Hillsdale College in Michigan. Yeah. And now that I no longer have an alma mater, Birmingham Southern is sadly no longer there. I've kind of adopted Hillsdale as my place because they're doing so many great things there. But, having their students really in pursuit of the good, the true, the beautiful. Yes. And there's some amazing course offerings online through Hillsdale. And Brady, I know you've done a number of them already.
Yes, I have.
I think Charlie Kirk had completed 31 of their courses before he was assassinated. And so there's some wonderful course offerings there. I would encourage your listeners, if there's a desire to learn more about the founding of our country, about the foundations of our civilization, about what it means to pursue the good, the true, the beautiful, go online and check out Hillsdale and call Brady. He can help you navigate all that.
Yes, I highly recommend the Hillsdale online courses. They're free, and they've got them on a bunch of different topics like theology, philosophy, history, politics, science. They've got it all. So definitely check it out. It really goes back to education, like we were talking about earlier.
And our Student Eagles group, we meet on Monday nights once a month. We actually have a meeting tonight, and we recently just finished a Hillsdale course, and everyone seemed to really enjoy it. We're excited to start another one up eventually. When we find another one that we're all interested in looking at. Right now we're doing debate training, but after our debate training, we'll probably get back into another Hillsdale course. But I too can say that they are extremely informative. Yeah,
and tonight you're coming and speaking to our group, and so that's going to be awesome for our students. And I think maybe afterwards we got a basketball hoop there, so we can do some one-on-one competition
dunk on some of the high schoolers.
I don't think I need to be trying to slam dunk at 49.
We'll get you on the court today.
I used to could. I could slam dunk, but not anymore.
That's awesome. That's good. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I think this was a great podcast. I really enjoyed it. Jill, do you have a Bible verse to close us out?
I do. I have a Bible verse. Today's Bible verse is Proverbs 3:5-6. I'm reading off my phone because I'm a little tired today, and I don't want to get it wrong. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight.
That's great. Amen to that.
Wraps it up good, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank y'all. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. And thank you to everyone for tuning in today, and we will see you again next time.